Hey everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter, and I greatly appreciate you being with us today for another edition of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm your beat writer from Sports Illustrated covering the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's great to be with you. We are going to have a really good podcast today. We got some great emails from you. We're going to answer them, we're going to go at them and just really talk about it and get into the flow of the Raiders. We're 13 days away from the start of training camp. 12 days away from me jumping on a bird and heading to California. It's going to be a great time. So glad that football's coming back. I'm sure that you echo those sentiments. We had some big news yesterday. We're going to actually talk about it with one of the emails about the Raiders announcing a couple of open practices. So let's get right into today's email. The first one comes to us from M. Root, and it says, Hondo, in your podcast, on rookies to watch, you mentioned JPJ. He put JPS, but it's JPJ, Brock and Tommy, but no Trey. How come? That is from initial M Root. Great question. So there's a couple of reasons there. Brock is going to get on the field immediately. JPJ is going to get on the field immediately. And Tommy Eichenberg and special teams and some other things is going to see the field immediately. I think he's also going to see the field as a player. I don't think he's going to unseat anybody for a starting job immediately. I'm not saying that, but I think he will see some significant reps. Trey is a different duck, and I want to explain what I mean by that. I think he has real superstar potential. I'm a buyer on him, on Trey Taylor, 100% buyer on him. But I think his road to getting playing time, because there's people ahead of him. There's Merrick, Epps, uh, Isaiah Palomao is there. There are some more people ahead of him that although I think he is going to be a very good player, and I'm certainly going to be watching him closely, I don't think that he's in a spot like those other three where he will emerge as quickly. I'll give you an example. Zamir White was a guy, didn't really emerge as quickly. Why? There was Josh Jacobs ahead of him and other people. I think, again, I'm a buyer on Trey. I've said this before. I wouldn't be shocked one day if he's a captain of this team. He's just a young man of tremendous character, integrity, loves the game, plays the game the right way. He's got a lot of that Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane, Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby type characteristics you can't teach. You can't teach that in people. You either have it or you don't. There's a lot you can teach. You can teach people that have those characteristics but don't know the game, how to play the game. But you can't teach size, you can't teach speed, you can't teach work ethic, you can't teach love of the game. I heard it once described like this. How strong is your want to? Because that'll determine what you do when you determine your want to. He has the want to. I think the guy is a really special player, so that's why I didn't. It wasn't anything like I've lost interest in the guy or anything that makes me think differently of Taylor. I believe in him 100%, and I think he's gonna. I think I think when this draft is over 10 years from now, I mean, they knew what they were getting in Brock. They knew what they were getting in JPJ. I think that Trey Taylor could be the steal of the draft. There's nothing about him not to like. I joked with someone the other day. Everything to like about him as a football player, everyone to like about him as a kid. He forget football. If he was a manager of a Wendy's, he's the kind of kid you want your daughter to marry. Just salt of the earth kid. So yeah, I'm a big Trey Taylor guy. Big. All right, next. Hi Hondo. On your podcast, you talked about JPJ on the left guard next to Colton, but there have been many reports that he will be fighting Cody for the right guard position. Can you tell us why you keep saying the left? David S. Yeah, that's a great question, David, and I'm glad that you asked it. Couple of points I want to make here. If you go back, you will um uh if you go back, you went to the draft in my draft coverage. I you will see that I'm trying to remember your name. Okay, David, sorry. You will see I talked about him on the right. And then they came into rookie camp and they played him some at the left. Now, here was the reasoning there. They really like Thayer a lot. And they have two guys, although Thayer has some reps, he doesn't have anywhere near Dillon's. That was the thinking of Coach Craig, Getsy, and others. And wherever it is, right or left, he's going to be competing with Cody. Now, I keep saying the left because coming out, that was kind of where they thought about him a lot. He is viable at either one. Ideally, I think their thinking process, at least the last time that I spoke to them, the thinking process was, yeah, we're going to put him on the left. He's young. He's got Colton and Andre. So you got a rookie between two solid veterans. And then you got Dillon over there. So you don't have two rather inexperienced guys on the right. Now, he could be either one. Very, very, very feasible. So anyone that's saying they think he's going to be a right guard, I don't have an issue with that. And I don't think it's set in stone that he's a right or a left. But in the sake of the argument, that is where we discussed him was at left. But either one, you could use right or left um, um, interchangeably, and the battle's there. If Cody is the guy, if Cody beats him out, or let me rephrase that, if he doesn't keep Cody at bay, then I would see it more at the right because Cody's experienced over there with Dillon. So that's a great question, and I hope that answers it thoroughly to you of what what my thinking process was. The next comes from Emmanuel T. Love your name, man. Great name. Emmanuel T says, Mr. Carpenter, you were pretty emphatic. In fact, I remember laughing when someone asked you about the Raiders paying bank to go get Dak Prescott, that it wasn't going to happen. I appreciate that. But do you think it was only for this year that he's not a possibility? Do you think he's a possibility for next year? That is Emmanuel T. Well, great question. And if I remember correctly, you're right. Someone asked me about the Raiders going and paying bank or bag. It was one of the two. I don't remember for Dak Prescott. And I said, absolutely not. That was not even a viable option this offseason at all. And I saw it a lot of places, but it wasn't reality. It was not Dak Prescott was not coming here this offseason. Now, I think there is absolute potential he could come here. But when people talk about paying bank or bag for him, I think you have to ask yourself, he's been on incredibly talented teams and his statistics are very, very good. I think that the Raiders would have to ask themselves, is he a guy that you're going to go spend $55 million on? No. I don't see the Raiders paying him in that north of 50 range. Do I like him? I like him a lot. Do I think he's a good guy? I think he's a great guy. I know people that played with him, and I zero. Do I think he's a good quarterback? I absolutely do. Do I think he's a $50 million a year quarterback? I don't think his resume says that. I just don't think it is. So do I think he is a viable option should Gardner and Aiden and Anthony not show the Raiders a long-term plan? Yes, I do think he's a viable option. Do I think he's a viable option north of 50? Nope. No. Great question, Emmanuel, and thank you for asking it. The next one comes from us from Carrie C. Hondo, I would love for you to answer my question. You're the only person in the media that seems to be a buyer on the Raiders and Antonio Pierce. You called the win in KC last Christmas as well. So, what is it that you see and others aren't? Well, first of all, Kenny, I appreciate that. I don't read other people. Um, so I don't know who is and who isn't. So I'm not saying that with a false modesty. I'm trying to just tell you if someone else does, I'm not perpetuating that you said I'm the only one. That was your thought process. Couple of things about AP and about the Raiders. I am not afraid to be critical of Mark Davis when I think it's fair, but I'm never going to be critical just to be critical. I always laugh at people when you say something good. Oh, you're just a homer. Or you're afraid you're going to lose your credentials. I'm not going to lose my credentials for reporting truthful things and having opinions about the Raiders, good or bad. It's a professional organization. It just doesn't happen. I understand that fans think that way. Or I had someone say to me the other day, um, I like this particular um, media person because they never go to anything. Well, I don't feel that way at all. I like media that are talking to these guys. They're in the room. If I write something critical, they're going to see me in the locker room. That's just being a man. And so if you're not there, though, you can't get the feel. I'll give you an example. You can read a transcript of someone saying, I'm happy. I'm glad to be a Raider, and I fully support what the coaches are doing. I don't know where that negativity comes from. You can read that transcript. But when you're standing next to the guy and you know him and you know how he is every single day in practice, when you know his mentality every single day in practice, when you understand his mannerisms, when you understand everything about him, and then he says this, I support the coaches 100%. Whatever they decide, I'm sure is correct. I'm glad to be a Raider. Boom, you can tell a difference. When you're there and you build a relationship with a guy and they know, hey, he's trustworthy. He just doesn't run with crap. Or you can go to a guy and say, hey, can I ask you something off the record? I'm using it for background. What that means is I'm not going to quote you. I'm not even going to say use you as an anonymous source. I'm just trying to get a feel to make sure what I'm hearing is correct. And they know, yeah, I can trust you. I've talked to you before. You've never betrayed. Yeah, go ahead. With that said, I have never, ever been the person that says I'm going to be critical to impress people. Look, I can be critical. And I think sometimes media do it. It makes no sense. Nor have I ever been the guy that's going to be flowery and fluffy so you'll like me. When I walk into the building, my job is not to be liked or to be hated. My job is to be respected. They can say, hey, I respect this about you. I had a conversation one time with a Raider employee that was not happy with something I reported. And when we got done, I said to them, I will be glad to retract what I said with a quote from you. Or I said, wouldn't really be in a retraction, but I'd be glad to present another side if I can use a quote. No, I'm not giving you a quote. I said, okay, then I stand by my reporting. Well, it ended up later on that my reporting was accurate. And, they said to me, I didn't like it, but you were right. And by the way, they said, thank you for not making it personal. So, first thing I think you want, why am I optimistic? Mark Davis has done a brilliant job of doing what his dad couldn't do. He moved the Raiders and got a new stadium built. and the team is financially in great shape. Great shape. So now money is no object, whether it's big screens on the field for practice, moving everything to Costa Mesa. I mean, that's costing him millions of dollars. No complaint. It's what you want. It's what we're doing. And that's a big deal. So from the Telesco champ, I love the direction of the management, the leadership of the team. Great. I'm a buyer there. Now let's go to coaching. I'm a big buyer in AP for a few reasons. I'm nervous about coaches that are hardliners, let's just use Bill Belichick for a minute. Bill Belichick, when you're winning, nobody says anything. But he didn't become hardened until he won. He was demanding, but he wasn't hardened. I know people that played for him. I know people who played for him when he kind of made that metamorphic change into from demanding Bill to wow Bill, where he was a real hardliner. All right. That works, but it doesn't endear you to your players. And the moment people can turn on you, they do. Now, I've also seen the rah coaches, and I don't believe that AP is one of those, where the players don't respect them and they run over them and the organization fails. In my opinion, the best coaches are absolutely demanding, but very personable with their team. They have a personal relationship. Personal. I will never forget this. When I was getting ready to become a dad, I was sitting on a dry creek bed in Oklahoma, deer hunting with my dad. And I said to my dad, I was really nervous. My daughter was about to be born. And I just said, I'm really nervous about how to do this. You were a great dad. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, do you think that you came with instructions? And I said, no, sir. And my dad taught me something. He said, remember something, son, about being a dad. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, that's a saying that actually came from football. Years later, I found out it came from Jim Tressel's dad, the great football coach at Baldwin Wallace. But it was a great saying by my father. And it works in coaching. Guys don't care how much you know. Do you know how much you care? It's why AP, and we've reported this ad nauseum, when he brought in his staff, said, I want you to spend this offseason getting to know your guys. I want you to know who their wives are, their girlfriends, their kids. I want you to know them as people. And he wanted it from his staff. He didn't want a divided staff. He wanted, hey, we're a team here. We're a team. Now, I'm going to, so I believe in him as a coach 100%. On the things he doesn't know, he's teachable. I'm not going to say a particular incident because I don't have permission to use a coach's name, but I was told by a Raider coach that he went to AP one time about something AP wanted privately in his office and said, hey, coach, you got him in? He goes, sure. And he goes, I know you want to do this and I'm going to do it. I'm not here to argue with you, but I'd like to show you some tape. And I just feel like I at least owe you to tell you why I think that might not be a good idea. Or I'm paraphrasing the discussion. And the coach said, I showed AP the tape. I explained why. And he looked at me and goes, great, let's do it your way. And the coach was stunned. And AP goes, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate the way you presented it. I think you're absolutely correct. And AP had a lot of respect for that coach. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of respect from those coaches for him. So I like that part. I like his guts. I like that he'll coach with his guts. Example, there'll be times when you're thinking, all right, they're going to punt, and he goes for it. He just has that sense of the game. Hey, this is a big moment. This is a big moment. We need to get this first down, or we need to do this or that. And sometimes he'll make decisions that aren't coaching decisions. It's stuff that he knows from his gut, from being a very high-end player, that he knows, okay, this is a bigger moment than just a 4th and 3. This is a statement. I can look over at their side. I can see how the ebb of this game's going. We got to get momentum back, or we need to put our foot on their throat, crush it. I like that. I like it. I like that a lot. So that's why. Next, I believe in the roster. I think they've got a really good roster with a good mix. I think they have potential answers at quarterback. I do not believe any of the quarterbacks on this roster right now you can definitively say are an answer. But they have set this team up that if they aren't, they're not going to have a problem getting an answer. And if they are, they were brilliant because the team is better because of how they drafted. So literally, I am a buyer, but I'm in it. So I get to see it. If you are a person that's not covering this team, or maybe not close to people that you're covering, you don't know that story about a coach walking into AP's office. There's maybe some things you don't know about him overruling on some 4th and 3s and saying, no, this is too big. We got so I don't mind people having outside opinion. It's America. I'm not God, but that's why I'm a believer. Do I think this is a 10-win team? I said I think it's a 9 to an 11-win team. So I always go in the middle, 10. I'm not fooled to think it's a Super Bowl team, but I think that this is a team that has set themselves up with ownership, management, coaching, and players extremely well. And then the last thing is they have the best facilities in the NFL. Allegiant Stadium is elite. Every time I walk in that stadium, and I've been there for every game, every practice that the media was allowed, every game, haven't missed a one. And every time I walk in, I'm still like, wow. Every stadium I go to, I'm still like, not Allegiant, not Allegiant, not Allegiant. That is a great facility. And when Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, their training facility, it's not even close. I mean, the pools, the weight rooms, the fields, the way they take care of every little detail. Listen, I've been to places before, and I literally remember me and another media guy joking, what, they can't afford to get a mower out here? Everything at the Raiders is pristine and perfect. The entire organization, from the janitors to the security to the owner, good people. There's not one person in that organization that I don't genuinely like. Genuinely. And I can't always say that, but it's how I feel. The next one comes to us from Keith S. Hondo. Love all the Raiders information, and I got a simple question for you. Zeke wrote an article about second-year players under pressure, and he talked about Tyreek Wilson. Do you agree with him? From your previous reporting, I didn't get that impression, Keith asked. First of all, Keith, it was a great story by Zeke, and he was sharing another national report on the pressure on Tyreek. So this is a complex answer, and I'm going to give it to you in a complex way. I said this, and you can go back and look, when the Raiders selected Tyreek Wilson. I was very emphatic. Their plan was not for him to play much last year at all. They knew the injury. They knew he needed to recover. Their goal was to really look at this season as a rookie year. That was their plan for him. And when Chandler Jones went down, plans change. There's an adage in the NFL. In fact, Brian Billick wrote a book about it called Next Man Up. It's a great analogy. You know, every NFL team has injuries, has issues, of stuff that happens. And, I can't tell you the amount of coaches that'll sit there and say, well, we would have really had a good year if this player hadn't got injured. And then the great coaches go out and have good years knowing players are going to get injured. They just know it. I mean, Colton Miller goes down. Thayer Mumford shined last year. Literally shined. Josh goes down. Zamir shined. It just happens. And it's the name of the game. It's the game of football. So let's go with Tyreek. Again, this is what I love about the digital age. You can go back and watch all those podcasts or read what I wrote. So I'm not reinventing history here. So mentally within the organization, and this may not be the case with Tom Telesco because he wasn't here. In fact, I've not asked him about that, and I will. But their mentality was this was really going to be Tyree's rookie year. Now, when you look at that in that context, he come on and finished the year playing extremely well. Okay. So now you have actual NFL tape. Before that, you didn't have NFL tape. Now you knew he was a dude. He was accepted around the NFL that he was a dude. Remember what a dude is? If you don't, go back and find out. I've taught it extensively in the draft. So that was great. But now he's just not a dude. He's a dude with film. Okay. Joe Alt, a dude. Brock Bowers, a dude. Talise Fuaga, a dude. All three of those guys, dudes, but they don't have NFL film yet. If you look at this as Tyree's rookie year, dude, but you have film. Do I think there is? I think there is a lot of pressure that Tyree feels from the fan base. But I think the Raiders did a tremendous job of going to him saying, hey, you know what? We get it. Fans have expectations. And so does he, by the way. But you need to know we're very happy. We were looking at this as almost a red shirt season, a mulligan season. So we see where you're at. You got rushed in a little bit because of Chandler. We get it. We understand it. So do I think that there's pressure on him? Yes. I don't think stress because I think the Raiders have done a really good job of managing him. But that young man has a high motor. Tyree Wilson has great expectations. You know, people see the big smile. And let me just share this with you. He reminds me of Irvin, Magic Johnson, but people from Michigan who knew him in Michigan, it's Irvin, but Magic Johnson. He reminds me of Magic. He just has a charisma and a smile that will light up any room. He is very appreciative. One of the things I really like about Tyree is he thinks before he answers. He's extremely respectful of people. You won't find Tyree Wilson being a jerk to a manager, a media guy, a fan, a coach, a teammate. To the best of my knowledge, and I have to say that because from time to time I have and I don't remember. I've never met his family, to the best of my knowledge, but I'm telling you that young man was raised right. He's just salt of the earth kid. And he listens to the veterans. He pays attention. You know, I always tell you there are three keys to being a successful human being: faithful, available, teachable, fat. You got to be fat. If you're not fat, you will never be a success in this world. He's fat. He looks like a piece of granite. Okay. I'm fat and look it. He's fat and he looks like granite. But so do I agree that there's pressure? Yeah, I think that there's pressure that he puts on himself and outside, but there's not that pressure from inside. They believe in him. They're excited. And now that he's got film, let's go. Let's go. And they're excited. So that is a really, really great question. And I thought Zeke did a great article there, by the way. Next one comes to us from Carrie C. Dear Mr. Carpenter, I am 9 3/4 years old and I live in California. Tonight, my dad was so excited because he read a story you wrote that the Las Vegas Raiders and their owner, Mr. Mark Owner Davis, Mr. Mark Owner Davis, was going to open 2 practices for fans to come to Allegiant Stadium. I am so excited. I have wanted to go to games, but my daddy says it's too expensive for us to go, and I understand. We are going to get to come up to both practices, my daddy thinks. One for sure, but probably two. So excited. My dad said this was great news. My dad said that this is the great things that makes the Raiders great, that they do stuff like this. We already clicked the link and have put in a reservation. Mr. Carpenter, if you see the owner, Mr. Mark Davis, or Coach Antonio Pierce, can you tell them this was great and that I appreciate it? I don't get to go to games, but Dad said this will be even better because a preseason game, we might not see all the star players, but at a practice, we will. It will be so much fun. We love the Raiders. We love your podcast. This is going to be great. I have never been to a Raider game. My daddy did before he and mom got married, and that's why he loves the Raiders. I can't wait. Also, Mr. Carpenter, if it would not be too difficult and we could plan it, do you know if there's going to be tailgating? My dad said that you've talked so much about tailgating that he thinks we can go there. And next, if we do you think that my daddy and I could take a picture with you? That would be so much fun. We would let my mom take it. And if you want to bring Dexter, I would think that was really cool too. That's from Corey C in California. Corey, that is so cool. You have a awesome dad. He's going to bring you from California, maybe even twice. That's cool. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to have fun. And you remember something. I want you to hear me, okay? I learned to love football going to games with my dad. And my dad's not alive anymore. I don't ever get to go to a game with him again. Dexter, my son, is never going to get to go to a game with his grandpa. And so I want you to make sure you have lots of fun because you're going to remember it your whole life. One day when you're old and your daddy's not alive, you're going to tell your grandkids, I'm a Raider fan because I went to games with your grandpa, with your great grandpa. Those are memories, Corey. And when you're a little boy, you don't think about memories. You just think about, I'm going to a practice, and you should. But as an older guy, can I just tell you something? Enjoy those memories. Hold dad's hand, give him a hug, and tell him thank you. Let him know you love him. Let your mom know, Mom, thank you. Because I'm going to tell you something, daddies just don't do this stuff without moms being part of the team, too. She's part of that team. You make sure you tell them how much you love them and how grateful you are. And you make those memories and you cheer loud. And yeah, I do believe there'll be tailgating. And Corey, I would love to come meet you and your dad and your mama and your family. It would be my honor. At that game, I'm going to be down in the locker room with lots of players and coaches, and they're all good guys. But the highlight of that game from that practice for me is going to be to meet you and your daddy. So, yes, I would love to. You'll find me in Lot J before the game. I'm usually out there probably 2.5 hours before the game is when I'm out there because I got to get in probably an hour, hour and a half before the game for my job. But I'd love to meet you. I'd love to shake your hand. Let me tell you something. There are a lot of young men like you that don't have great dads and moms. You do. You are so fortunate. Man, you're blessed. So make the most of it. Enjoy it. Have a wonderful time. And you know what? Mr. Mark Davis and Coach Antonio Pierce, this kind of stuff makes them happy. They love to see Raider fans. You want to tell them thank you? Here's what I need you to do. When you're there, I want you to wear the biggest smile, the biggest one. It can't be just it's got to be a big one. And if you get on that big screen, they'll see it. But if you don't, they'll feel it. That's how you tell them thank you. Grab dad's hand, give him a hug and kiss, tell him how much you love him. Grab mom, do the same. Be appreciative, and you smile big and you cheer loud. All right, buddy? Thanks, my friend. What a great email. It just makes me blessed. I love you, Raider Nation. You guys are the best. Thank you for joining me every day. All right, let's keep going. Next comes to us from Peter L. My question is, do you know if the refs in pregame prep focus on potential issues that might crop up in the game and looking to rule on the game consistently and fairly? I'm talking about things like making sure uh, they position themselves well to spot things like holding on the line. We know that Max gets held on nearly every play, but it's often not called. Not sure if if the stats are kept. I know we get privileged view on TV, but surely the refs could do better job there and try to dispel the myth that they are selling us short on the field. So do they prep, or do you think they should focus on known penalty hotspots like holding Max? Many thanks, Peter L. What a great email. So here's what I know. And I reached out to a buddy of mine that is an official because I wanted to make sure that nothing has changed. Coaches and of both teams are sending in stuff every week, either stuff the refs missed the week before, or hey, so I'm going to use an example. Let's say that they're playing the Denver Broncos and the Denver Broncos have a left tackle by the name of Dickie Bob Arbuckle. Now, there isn't a Dickie Bob Arbuckle. I'm literally just making up that name. But there's a reason. And let's say that Dickie Bob Arbuckle does a good job of keeping his hands here, which you remember I told you they won't call a hold there unless your hands are extended, because then they can see it. But as long as you're relatively close, they're not going to call a hold here. But maybe he's getting his thumbs under the pads. Now, I'm telling you this for a reason. I'm making up Dickie Bob Arbuckle and I'm making up the Broncos. But there was a team that they played where a tackle would get his hands underneath the pad. So it looks like it was just an acceptable hold, but he had more leverage. And so you make them aware during the week on film, hey, this is going on. Before the game, when you meet with the officials, the coach will say, hey, here's some things we'd like you to look at. 27 does this, 14 does this, 12 does this, or we're going to be running a trick play. And here's the trick play in the formation so you don't call a penalty or misread it. So all of that happens. That's 100% accurate. But during the game, they have places that they have to be. So they're not specifically watching one thing. I think it's absurd the amount of holding that occurs on Max Crosby. Now, I have no issue whether it's the Raiders or another team's offensive line holding in this area, because you know that's exactly what happens. It's why you see defensive linemen swimming with their hands a lot, trying to knock your hands off. Someone asked me one time, if you're going to be an offensive lineman, what has to be the strongest part of your body? And I tell them here, because when you're got your hand on that defender, he's constantly swatting, and these are big guys that lift a lot of weight. So I understand, but he just can't stand there and watch Max. He has to watch everything in totality. Do I think there are a lot of calls that are missed? Yes. Do I think some are missed legitimately? For sure. For sure. And I remember Ed Hightower was probably the most famous and I believe the best college basketball referee in the game. Personal friend of mine, love him dearly. Love him dearly. And I'm not going to share his opinion, but him and I had a lot of talks about in basketball games, the refs tried to keep the fouls even. Well, look at this team had 12 fouls. This team only had two. Totally unfair. Well, it's not unfair if the one team plays more aggressive and gets more fouls. So they can't just watch one thing. And but refs have a nature to want to be balanced. That's why a lot of teams play in the way that, well, all right, they're probably not going to call this because they've called a bunch against us. So they're probably not going to do that. All right. I hate that. I hate that. I hate it. 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 I don't look for balance. You'll see some games where, like last year, where the Raiders had no penalties because they played mistake free. Do you want to see them have to call penalties on the Raiders that aren't there to balance it out? No, I don't like that. I don't like that part and that feeling among refs. They all don't have it. Some do. So, um, but yes, they all have to be in a predetermined position and they can't just watch one thing. But when you keep talking about it, it does get top of mind. So I hope that answers your question. I just hope that puts it in a I framed it correctly. Yes, they do watch for certain things, but yes, they still do have predetermined positions they're supposed to be in. I hope that answers it. Thanks everybody for joining us. I hope that you just have a terrific day. Hope you enjoy your day and travel day for me, but a good day. We'll see you all soon. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.